All right, everyone, welcome back into another live edition of the Patriots Beat podcast here on the CLNS Media Network. It is Brian Hines. It is Alex Barth. We're back. It's been a while. There's been a lot that has gone down over the past few days, so we figured we would wait till today, wait till Wednesday to hop on here and kind of recap all of it before we get into mock drafts later in the week or tomorrow. So the fun stuff starts, but we will wrap up all of this Patriots news from the past few weeks, which concluded down at Gillette today, where we heard from the three.
Well, let's just before you get to, let's just let people know, because I was getting some tweets on Monday when the staff came out about why weren't we doing a show.
Mock drafts,
You guys kept asking for the mock draft show. As I said last week, we didn't want to do it when we still didn't have the coaching staff. So you had to wait a couple extra days for show this week. The flip side of it is first live mock draft tomorrow, so you can get excited for that
tomorrow. So
tomorrow time TBD, but it'll be tomorrow.
That'll be the fun stuff. Finally talking some draft and some prospects, but we did get Monday, I believe, Monday afternoon, night, we got the official additions, the new additions. They did not, they left off the guys who are coming back, which is reported to be Steve Belichick, Mike Pellegrino, Evan Rothstein, and Mayo. Gerard Mayo confirmed today that Troy Brown will be back, roll TBD. So we know those guys are coming back from last year. They announced the 17 new members of this year's coaching staff. We were down at Gillette today. The three offensive coordinators all spoke, and then we all went and we met all the other assistant and positional coaches again at Gillette today. So we can get into all the names and we can get into what the coordinators had to say today, but I guess we'll start with just, Alex, your big kind of picture on this staff, this big staff again, and kind of any big picture takeaways from what they had to say today before we get into some of the more smaller details.
I think the thing you heard today, the common theme today, one common theme, and I thought it was fascinating. I don't know necessarily what it means, but I found it very interesting, was Jeremy Springer and DeMarcus Covington, who were the two first-time coordinators. When they were asked about just kind of the gravity of getting that job, they both said, there's only 32 people that do this in the world. And it kind of felt like that was maybe a message that was coming down from the top as kind of a perspective. I don't know what that means. I don't have a take behind that. I just thought that was an interesting way to look at it. It kind of fascinated me. The other thing, and we talked about this when we talked about Van Pelt's, the little video, right, that the team put out when he spoke. But again, talking about making it about the players and putting the players in a position to succeed and building the schemes around the players. This team, they're not going to have the most talented roster in the league next year. They're not going to have the most talented. If they get to that point under this regime with Elliott Wolf and Matt Groh and Gerard Mayo, which I'm not saying like they're automatically going to get there, but I'm just, if we can think if we can just have a happy thought for a minute, right? Close your eyes, think about it. Even if they get there, it's not going to happen for 3 to 4 years minimum. So for them to be able to win and punch above their weight, they're going to have to get back to something the Patriots were so good at in their prime, which was finding players that maybe aren't these all-around superstar players, but are very good at certain things, putting them in position to do those things and maximizing the talent they have on the roster. The Patriots were so good at that for so long. I always point to like Kyle Van Noy as an example of that, or a guy like James White as an example of that, where they weren't running him between the tackles 25 times a game, but they still made him an incredibly effective player just based on what his skill set was. That's something they need to get back to. And it sounds like the coaching staff, especially Alex Van Pelt on the offensive side of the ball, fully subscribes to that. And that's got to be the biggest takeaway if you want positive. If you want to go the other direction, he was probably just being nice. Alex Van Pelt talking about the pieces in place on offense. Pop Douglas, Mike Onwenu, who's not even really in place. The second one, Ramondre, I guess, who's in a contract year. Yeah, there was one other weird one, and I'll let you jump in on that. And then there was one other thing Mayo said that really interested me. But from the coordinators, those were the things that stood out to me.
Yeah. I mean, with Van Pelt, you kind of, hit the big thing there. He talked a little about his scheme. He said it's going to be similar to what he ran
Right.
in Cleveland, but
Similar, but
obviously,
not the same.
yeah, he's taken stuff from all his stops, Green Bay, Buffalo. So going to be similar as what you saw
Hang on. Can
in
we talk about
Cleveland.
what he said about NFL Europe? Because that was the quote of the day.
That was very funny.
He talked about calling plays in NFL Europe and said,
There
he
wasn't
said, I
any
made a bunch of
pressure.
mistakes. Nobody cared. They just wanted to see us kick the ball.
Kick the ball.
Yeah. Which I thought was a great quote. So,
Yeah. So, yeah, he said the scheme will be similar, but like you said, he reiterated, I feel like multiple times that it's the players that come first, kind of before the scheme. So, he was asked about Mac. His quote there, he said, "Everyone, it's a fresh start," and then he pulled out his Billy O quote and he said, "It's a clean slate." So we're
yeah.
gonna reoperate, reorganize the clean slate protocol yet again for the second time here, but yeah, the puzzle pieces was, interesting. That was probably him being a little optimistic there. Covington, we obviously are familiar with him. He said, he did confirm he'll be calling the defensive plays. He said it's going to be pretty similar defensively as we all expect with most of that staff intact. And then Sprainer, like I was ready to run through a wall for him. Like that's what you want in your special teams coach, just a high energy type of guy. He's still getting used to the Northeast weather. He said it's the first time ever up here, but he seems like a good guy to lead that group, especially when you add an experienced special teams assistant like Tom Quinn, who's been around the game, forever. He was the special teams coach with the Giants the 2 times they beat the Patriots in the Super Bowl. So you have a guy with a lot of energy, a younger guy, and you pair him with a guy who's been around it and has a lot of experience. I think that's a good pair for that group.
Yeah, absolutely. So the one other takeaway, I want to get the transcript here. Hang on, so I make sure I get it right. Was Gerard Mayo on the size of the coaching staff? I thought this was very interesting. If I can find the quote, which here it is. So he was asked about, why, and they're at 21 and counting, and Mayo suggested that they might add. If they add, it sounds like it's going to be a fringe ad, probably assistant level quality control coach. I don't think they're bringing in like a whole other, positional coach, assistant coordinator, or anything like that. Sorry, you wanted to say something?
No, I was going to say like all the positional roles are full, so there's nothing like they could add there.
Well, I'm saying something like a passing game coordinator, or it sounded more just like rounding out the staff, maybe like an assistant. I don't think they have an assistant quarterbacks coach, assistant running backs coach, things like that. But so they were 21 and counting. They were at, I think it was 16 or 17 last year, which was one of the smallest staffs in the league. 21 is about average, a little over average. And Mayo said, one thing we wanted to make sure was that we weren't duplicating roles. For us, we were thinking about what value does this role bring to the team. Historically, we've always had small staffs. It's hard to get things done that way in today's NFL. We weren't really thinking about the size. We were just thinking about how can we make this staff as good as it can be. Honestly, after talking to a lot of coaches, your first year coaching, you hope you put together the best staff, blah, blah, blah. Realistically, it's a process. I don't know that that's a shot at Bill, but to say we weren't thinking about the size and then in the same breath say it's hard to get things done with a small staff in today's NFL is, I mean, those are two conflicting comments. And maybe it wasn't like, okay, we need to get to this number of coaches. I don't think they're thinking about the size in that regard, but it does feel like there was maybe a belief that either too many people were doing too much in the building or a select group of people had too many responsibilities and they wanted to break that up. And he talks about not overlapping roles, which is important because you run that risk with a big staff. But I think special teams is a perfect example where they bring in Tom Quinn as a special teams assistant. Tom Quinn's background is working with kickers. That's not his entire background, but like he has a lot of experience in working with kickers and punters, whereas Jeremy Stevens, did I just say Jeremy Stevens? Jeremy Springer still learning here, but he has a big staff, a lot of names to learn. Jeremy Springer, his background, I think, is more with like the coverage players and schemes and things like that. So both guys have two very distinct jobs. There's not a lot of overlap, and neither one you feel like is doing too much. But that quote was fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely seemed like a bit of a shot, especially, coming off last year's staff where it was small to start, and then you have Adrian Clem leave with, an illness, and Ross Douglas leave to take another job, and especially that offensive staff, it got really kind of stretched tightly there, where you probably have guys like Billy O, doing more than what an offensive coordinator should be doing. And now you look at the staff, they have, Michael McCarthy, offensive coaching assistant, quality control. You go to the defense, Vinny Del Palma, who was just a Boston College linebacker, defensive coaching assistant, quality control. Jamal Lett, same role on the defense, and Kobe Tippett, who Andre Tippett's son, right? Son, not
Yep.
nephew, son.
And
He's
Sharon middle school graduate, I guess, whatever
legend.
you do for middle school.
Sharon middle school legend.
Yeah, didn't go to our high school. Didn't go to. He went to private school, but I can still get to claim him a little bit as a Sharon guy.
But he's the special teams coaching assistant and quality control. So all of these, 3 layers, they all have these quality control guys who, I don't know, maybe kind of like interns, where anything that just kind of falls down, they can kind of clean that up and pick up anything that falls through the cracks. So
yeah,
like Mayo said, you're not having a lot of guys, like you're not duplicating stuff. You're not having multiple guys working on one thing, but you have enough guys to handle everything that you need to, so you're prepared kind of throughout the week.
Yeah, and the whole like trickle down of it, it's a lot more structured. It's a lot, and we can talk about the actual construction of the staff itself, because I do have some questions on maybe individual placements, but there is a real hierarchy to it, which in the past it felt like, and it clearly, well, there was a hierarchy too under Bill. Earlier, it was when you had the brain drain in like the late 2010s that it felt like things fell apart. And it feels like there's that more rigid structure back in place.
Yep. So, I mean, who are you looking at on the rest of the staff? You just kind of mentioned you have some questions on how it's ordered or prioritized, but
yeah. So the one thing I wonder about, because we haven't been on since they announced the new hires, which means we haven't reacted to the wide receiver and tight ends coaches, because those are the 2 we were waiting on. Tyler Hughes at wide receivers, Bob Bicknell at tight ends. I don't understand why those 2 aren't flipped. I actually thought it was an error. And Bob Bicknell coached tight ends in the NFL from 2009 to 2011 with the Chiefs and Bills. He then spent 10 years coaching receivers. He coached receivers in Philly when they, developed some good players. He coached wide receivers in San Francisco. He coached wide receivers at Baylor when they were kind of churning through some talent. He's a wide receivers coach. So maybe there'll be some overlap there. He's not strictly structured in, and he played tight end in college at Boston College. He's a Holliston, Massachusetts guy, actually. But, and Tyler Hughes was, I don't know exactly what he did at Washington. I'm assuming he worked with the wide receivers, and obviously they had good wide receivers, but he's a guy who was here the last, 2000 to 2022, or sorry, 2020 to 2022
yeah,
as a general offensive assistant. And then was in the same role last year in Washington. And usually those guys end up working with specific positions, even if they're general. And Hughes did work with the wide receivers a little bit when he was here. But of all the coaches they hired, the one with the best wide receiver coaching resume is not the wide receivers coach. And that's not even anything against Tyler Hughes. I just feel like Bob Bicknell maybe could be, and look, he might be a very good tight ends coach too, but given their history or lack thereof developing receivers, and when you look at the undertaking they have this off season, I wondered about that one. That's my, and I know people with Van Pelt and his lack of experience calling plays, and people wonder about the defensive staff. The biggest head scratch to me is Bob Bicknell at tight ends, Tyler Hughes at wide receivers. I feel like those should be the other way around.
Yep. He did Hughes, he did play wide receiver. So I don't know, maybe they're just like, hey, you played receiver, you played tight end.
Maybe that's it. Yeah.
So he does have some experience there. And he does have, Tyquan Underwood in that room. So
I like the Tyquan Underwood hire. I actually, talking to people at the college level, he was very highly regarded.
Yeah.
And I don't think people necessarily thought the NFL jump was coming for him. I think people thought he was going to go lead his own offensive staff at the college level. Yeah. And he was the pass game coordinator last year for Pittsburgh. So he got that experience. He's done a very good job at that level. He's highly regarded. I think he was a really good hire. Maybe we haven't been on since then. We haven't been on in a bit, but I thought he was a really good hire.
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe that room kind of shakes out where, Underwood's handling more of, footwork and,
Yeah.
routes and all that. And Hughes is kind of the big picture guy. But the other thing that's really enticing with Tyler Hughes there is he spent last year at Washington. And how many of these offensive players of the Washington team are we talking about for the draft, right?
Oh,
Whether it's,
right. Yeah.
Michael Penix, Roma Dunze probably isn't in the Patriots range, but Jalen Polk, Jalen McMillan, they have a couple, offensive tackles up front like this. So this is a guy who Elliot Wolf and whoever's making those decisions can come down to him and get some really good intel on those Washington guys who are coming out to the draft. So that was just another kind of, added bonus, I guess, of Brendan Hughes in, and see if that pays any dividends as we get into April.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yep. So, I mean, that was most of the staff. I don't think any names we didn't talk about. I think we touched on all the other guys who were hired before the release on Monday. But any other thing you had from the pressers today, or just the staff in general?
I think that's pretty much it. I mean, Springer's awesome. Like, talk about it. That guy is a special teams coach.
100%.
Uh,
He's
he's
him
going to
and
be a ton of fun.
him and Tom Quinn, they're getting Chad Ryland back on track, who,
Yeah.
Springer said he worked him out last year in the draft and was a big fan of him. So they're getting him back on track. But yeah, that's a special teams room right now with those two guys. So that'll be tons of fun. But anything else you had from today?
I think that's pretty much it for me.
All right. So that is your new Patriots coaching staff, all 17 of them. Again, maybe there's, a few additions trickling in. We'll get
Is
Troy
it
Brown.
21? 17 was last year, right? It's 17 new hires.
17 new guys. And
Yeah, because they like Brian Belichick, Mike Pellegrino, they weren't part. The only guy who was a part of that release who was here was Covington, but he's a coordinator level, so it makes sense that he would be but it just like logistically be weird if he wasn't a part of that.
Yep. So we'll get Troy Brown's role sometime, maybe soon, maybe not.
I'm betting it's going to be kick returners coach or returners coach or special teams assistant. Like, it would be weird if they put him back on the offensive side of the ball, because anything's going to be a demotion. Like, you're not going to make him a general offensive assistant. You're not going to make him the wide receivers assistant. Maybe they make him the running backs assistant, because he did coach running backs his first year here before he moved to receivers. But I don't really see why they would do that. I'm betting it's something with special teams. I think that's what it's going to be. The real interesting one to me is Evan Rothstein.
So that's what I was going to say. Could you just make Brown like a general assistant, like not assistant head coach, obviously, but just like general assistant? I don't know how
offensive assistant.
Yeah.
I mean, you have, so basically what McCarthy is, or you call him a senior offensive assistant like McAdoo is. You definitely could. I think though they're going to move him to special teams, because say what you will about the receivers under Troy Brown, and most of it would be fair. They've consistently had good returners.
Yeah.
With him.
Marcus Jones.
Pop
talked a lot about how he taught him how to, Pop said he didn't even know how to read a football until he worked with him, at the Shrine Bowl last February. So he's done a good job in that room. But Evan Rothstein is kind of an interesting one, because he'll be back. He was assistant quarterbacks coach, so they don't have that title if they want to keep him there. But do you think there's like maybe a spot for him kind of upstairs, and like that, I don't want to say like Ernie Adams role, but something kind of maybe what Matt Patricia did when he first came back, or
I wonder if he goes back to being more like front office focused.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see how that one kind of develops too. But that is the coaching staff. Again, maybe another minor addition or some couple title changes that will take place over the next few weeks. But let's take a very quick break. We'll hear from our friends at FanDuel, and then we'll talk about some of the other Patriots news that happened over the past few days.
Get your buckets with your first bet at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams, quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. Just visit FanDuel.com/Boston and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA.
All right, so we had a couple roster releases as the Patriots get to work on the actual personnel department, and it was some veterans on the defensive side of the ball. Lawrence Guy was let go. Adrian Phillips was let go as well. Was that Monday too? I think it all kind of happened.
It all happened within like a 20-minute. I forget. I was watching something stupid on I'd been writing all day, and I was like, let me take a break. I was watching something stupid on YouTube to like mentally
I think it was
reset.
It was Monday, like right during the shootout of the Bruins game, which went like 9 rounds. And
that's what it was.
It was like, oh my gosh, like everything is happening at once. But 2 veteran defenders go: Lawrence Guy, Adrian Phillips. Guy was actually the longest tenured defensive player left on the team. Clears up like just about over $5 million in cap space. You kind of see it coming from Adrian Phillips. You know, he only played 12% of the defensive snaps last year. I think it was 9 total snaps after the bye. So he became kind of a special teams only player. Lawrence Guy's kind of an interesting one because he played, 50% of the snaps on the defensive line last year, but getting up there in age a little bit. But 2 guys who just kind of throughout their tenure were, great locker room guys and really kind of consistent players too on that defense.
Absolutely. I think guys that made their mark here. I mean, Guy won a Super Bowl, was a team captain. Phillips, unfortunately, never got to that point. He came in 2020, so he was kind of here for the reset, but he played a big time role in that defense for a couple of years, but his play time dropped to 21% last year. It was like 70% the year before that. Writing was on the wall for him. Guy's play time, I mean, it was still up there. He was like just under 50%, but it was an all-time low for his time in New England. I think it was 7 years in New England. He was playing the fewest snaps he ever had. Both guys were older. Both guys were entering the final year of their contracts, money coming back for cutting them. And you look moving forward, you have a guy in Marte Mapu who you just drafted, who projects to play Phillips' role. You've got a guy in Keon White who they're going to need to fill some other responsibilities Lawrence Guy did. He did a few different things, but I think a good chunk of that role goes to Keon White. And this is kind of one of the changes we talked about that we were going to see post Belichick era. They realistically could have made these moves last year. All right, let me rephrase that. Like, they weren't going to cut them, but you drafted guys who fit these roles. Play them, let them develop. And again, Phillips' playing time dropped. That was more because of Jabril Peppers than anything else. But now you had Marte Mapu even further down, and everybody's going to be back, and you don't want another year of Marte Mapu being like absolutely benched. Keon White, I mean, he played a significant amount last year, but he played well, and you want to expand his role. So you're opening up money. You're getting younger. You're getting more athletic. You're giving the kids a chance to play. Like, this is what teams in the Patriots position where you're rebuilding, this is what you do. I think Adrian Phillips could still play. Lawrence Guy was a little bit on the decline, but he could still play a little bit. But those guys are not going to be contributors by the time you're back in your contention window. It wasn't going to happen. So now you're letting guys who will be around and should be in their prime at that point get valuable experience moving forward. So I'm not going to sit here and take a victory lap because, like, oh, those guys sucked. I'm glad to see them gone. That's not what this is. But there just wasn't a ton of there wasn't a ton of logic in keeping them around. There was no real end point in still having them here. They were just kind of serving as roster fodder, where now those roster spots are going to go elsewhere. You're going to get playing time to guys who should get playing time. You open up some money as well. And they weren't realistically going to be able to trade either of them either. I've seen some of that. Yeah. I don't think, given where their contracts were and their age, you weren't talking about maybe more than a 6th, 7th round pick.
It's also like 2 respected veterans who you're cutting early here, so they have a few weeks to kind of they can go sign with the team right now, but you're not going to trade them to somewhere they don't want to go, like for a 6th or 7th round pick. Like, let them go pick their future, go pick what is next for them. But yeah, they have some, you'd assume they would add another, young defensive lineman here, but they have some intriguing guys even beyond Keon White, like Jeremiah Farms flash at times as a, intriguing pass rusher. Sam Roberts has had some really good moments in preseasons and training camps the past few years, but then like Lawrence Guy's in front of him, so he can't really get on the field. So they have some interesting young defensive linemen there. Maybe they add another one, and yeah, like Marte Mapu just should open the door for him to get some more time. But one of the other thoughts with Guy, do you think this is any signal of maybe a scheme change at all? That we hear Covington and all these defenders say we want to be aggressive, right? We want to get after the quarterback. Maybe they're moving away from these kind of bigger, two gapping run defensive tackles and moving Keon White inside, or trying to get someone like Jeremiah Farms more snaps who can shoot gaps and kind of get after the quarterback a little bit more, play more aggressive that way or that style.
Maybe I don't really think so, just because Covington said today they weren't going to change a ton defensively, and I don't think they like, it doesn't make sense to. You still have so much personnel coming back. Let's see what they do in free agency. If they go out and sign a guy like Christian Wilkins, that kind of changes the picture a little bit. But I wouldn't say I'm not saying that can't happen.
Yeah.
I'm saying the one move on its own, like just releasing Lawrence Guy on its own, I don't think you can make any, even if he's a perfect fit for the scheme they're going to run, it still makes sense to cut him right now. So yeah, I'm not saying what you're saying isn't going to happen. I'm saying I don't think that
you
to
can't
use this as evidence of that is maybe one step too far.
But if you sign like a Christian Wilkins to pair with Barmore, then you could say, okay, maybe we're switching things
right
up.
Now it's very clear, like, okay, yeah, they're getting more aggressive.
Well, what do you think? What do you think? Another defensive lineman, Devon Godshaw's kind of future is here, because they could release him and free up, I think it's $8 million on the cap. Last year of his deal. Is he 30 or 29, 30? He's kind of getting up there. So maybe that is, if you're switching kind of your scheme, you maybe move on from Godshaw and bring in one of those Christian Wilkin types. But what do you think Godshaw's role is if he'll be here next year?
So I'll tell you this. And he's entering his age 30 season, like you said, final year of his contract. They open up $8.3 million. I just pulled it up while you were talking.
Yep.
Today it was stressed. It was stressed in Mayo's introductory press conference. And you also talk to people around the team. They're putting a premium on leadership. And, not chemistry guys, but what's the culture guys?
Culture. Yeah.
They're putting a premium on leadership and culture guys who are staples in the locker room and all of that. Devon Godshaw is very well respected inside that locker room. Devon Godshaw has tremendous command of that locker room. Now, do I think they'll bring him back after his contract year? Probably not. But in this transition year where they're trying to reset the culture and, something they value, I would be a little surprised. Now, his role may decrease. He may be what Lawrence Guy was last year. Like, he may be a year behind where Lawrence Guy is right now. But I think what he brings as an intangible, and I mean, you still need a nose tackle. Even if you're going to be more aggressive up front, you're going to get into 3rd and 1s. You're going to get into and goal situations where, like, you just need a big guy eating blocks in the middle. So I'm not saying he won't play. But even if his role is going to be reduced, it would have surprised me a little bit if they move on from him outright, just because of that leadership element he brings.
Yep. And he had an awesome year last year too. That was probably the best year during his tenure here. So he had a really good year. But yeah, it's kind of funny. I was looking at, when, Matthew Slater retired yesterday, which we'll get to a little bit later, but there could be a chance that 4 of their captains aren't back, between Slater, Mac Jones, Hunter Henry, who's a free agent, and if David Andrews retires. Like, that's a lot of leadership to replace. And I know you want to get younger and start this new wave, but you still have to, keep some veterans around and build kind of a culture. So the things that happened the last few years don't keep continuing and kind of leak into that. So we'll kind of see with Godshaw there. But the last thing, on free agency, yesterday at 4:00, the free agency or the franchise tag window officially opened. So teams can now put the franchise tag on any players for the Patriots. You assume it's probably between Kyle Duggar or Michael Onwenu. Those are their 2 big guys. Any takes on that, or do you think they're going to put it on one of those guys, if at all?
So I wouldn't rule out Hunter Henry either.
That's a high number, though.
Is it? So, okay, I've seen the number in two different. Is it 12 or is it 18?
It's 18.
Because Over the Cap still has it at 12.
I've
You
seen
guys at Pats Pulpit have it at 12.
We do?
Yeah, on your salary cap preview. Yeah, you have it at it's like 12.6. It's not exactly 12. It's 12 and change.
I believe so. Like the number is 12, but because he made 15 last year, you can't go under. So there's like an escalator. I've seen Miguel.
You're right.
Miguel's
right.
put
That
it
is
at
what it
18.
is.
So it's 18. I don't know why we put 12. I'll have to change that. But
I think because you probably put the table.
Probably just
over
put the table number. Yeah, but it is 18. So I don't see that for Hunter Henry.
I don't either, but I mean, do you use it to drag out a negotiation?
And extend them?
Yeah. I just think having to reset the tight end room is a big ask. He's also, in my mind, probably the most likely to play under the tag. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought for a second because you're exactly right about the number. It makes more sense to tag Kyle Duggar. That makes more sense. He's a guy that is a fit for you. Don't tag good teams. Don't tag players with the intent of them playing under the tag. Good teams use the franchise tag solely to extend the negotiation window. And that's
or trade, but you're probably not trading.
Or trade, right. When it comes to Kyle Duggar, of the two, Kyle Duggar is the one you're going to get the extension done with, and he's a fit for you and all of that. But I just don't know how this team can afford to lose Mike Onwenu. And the tag may be the only way you have to keep him, even if it means he's playing under it. So I'm torn. We're give it to Duggar, get the extension done. You have him, Peppers, Mapu as your safeties for the next 2 or 3 years. It's like a good core on the back end. You pair that with Christian Gonzalez, and all right, you got a real solid secondary here. And also you finally keep a guy that you drafted in the top 3 rounds, which they haven't done in the last 10 years. But then if the only chance you have to keep Onwenu is to tag him and he goes, now they don't have, forget starting tackles. They don't really have any backup tackles. The only 3 tackles they have under contract right now for next year are Verdarian Lowe, who's a project, Connor McDermott, who's probably done, was a good backup tackle at one point, but he took a big step back last year, and Andrew Stuber, who's never played an NFL snap. So adding one starting caliber tackle is such a massive undertaking for any team in any NFL offseason. If you lose Onwenu, you now have to add 2 plus backups. That's you're going to have a rookie at one spot. You want a capable backup. That's a ton of assets you're putting into just one position when you have a lot of needs. And I'm not saying you're not putting any assets into Mike Onwenu. It's like a $20 million tag. That's a lot of money, right? That's going to be a third of their cap space. Now, again, I try to extend them and get that number down. But the alternative, do you want to spend a lot or do you want to spend a lot, right? That's just kind of, neither option is great, but this is the situation. This is the situation they put themselves in. The way to not have to make this decision, I mean, we got to go back here. We got to go back to Isaiah Wynn in order to trace back why they're in the spot they're in. But so I'm torn. Ideally, because I think Duggar's contract should be easier because he plays a less expensive position, and we also know what position he plays. The Patriots are going to go in to negotiating with Onwenu as a guard, and he's going to go into the negotiations as a tackle. And that in itself is a hurdle. So ideally you get Duggar's contract done in the next week or two, so you don't have to make the decision. You just tag Onwenu and you go from there. You don't risk letting Kyle Duggar hit the open market. Duggar's deal should get done a little more quickly. We'll see if they do that. Because again, with Onwenu, the tag is offensive line. It's not guard tackles. So they don't get any clarity there. And that may also be why you tag them and you have them play under the tag, because there may not be a consensus on what position he's going to play. High end guard money and low high end tackle money. So the top 3 guards in the league make about the same as the tackles that are paid the 4th highest or 6th highest paid tackle. That money's about the same. that's a logical point to negotiate from, because it is kind of in between, which is where he is. And I think the Patriots, even if they are bringing him back as a tackle, will want the flexibility to move him back inside to guard if the situation presents itself. So there's all these complications there, which is why the franchise tag makes so much sense for him. But Duggar's the guy like that. It's textbook you tag. So we'll see. It's a long way of saying we'll see.
Long way of saying it could be either of them. But
right.
yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I'd rather retain Onwenu because I think he's kind of more important for you going forward. But I'm kind of expecting them to put the tag on Duggar here. And then maybe they use that to get a 3-4 year deal with them. But I think there's a lot of fans on that, especially on the defensive staff of Kyle Duggar, and I think they really do want him to hang around. So again, like I prioritize keeping Onwenu, but I just have a feeling that they're gonna end up using that tag and they're gonna end up using it on Duggar. But we'll kind of see there. But that's the roster moves update, a little free agency talk. When's that window close? Is it the 13th of March, I believe? Like that second week of March?
No, it's got to be before that because tampering begins on the 11th.
Okay,
so it's usually the Wednesday or Thursday before tampering.
So they have
probably like the 6th, 7th, 8th, something like that.
Yeah, right around the end of the first week of March. So they have some time to do that, but wouldn't be surprised maybe if that comes on Kyle Duggar maybe soon. But let's take one last quick break. We'll hear from our other friends over at LinkedIn, and then we'll wrap it up with a couple of retirement conversations.
This show is brought to you by LinkedIn Talent Solutions. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you want to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. It can be a pain, right, finding people for jobs, but LinkedIn Jobs definitely makes it easy. It's not just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the very best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all that while making the process easy and intuitive. Hiring is easy when you have that many qualified candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. It's so easy. See how many easies are in there? They're right. So many easies. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/beat, B-E-A-T. That's linkedin.com/beat, B-E-A-T. to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
Was just watching. You see Bryce Behringer's offseason video?
I saw he's like having a punting contest.
Hitting an absolute nuke. I think they said like 65 yards and like a 5.3 or something.
Hell yeah.
Just absolute bomb. I told Mike just to tweet it. He does all his back to work tweets, so he's got to put that out. But we did have, sadly, we all kind of saw it coming, but it was official yesterday. Matthew Slater decided to retire after a wonderful 16-year career. Should be first ballot Hall of Famer in my eyes and Bill Belichick's eyes, but that's a conversation for another day. But just an awesome career. Sad to see him go, but yeah, it's just tough to go.
Yeah. I mean, congratulations to him on a tremendous career. Like you said, we all kind of saw it. And look, like, I'm also happy for him because, and you saw it in the Patriots content team did such an amazing job with everything with Slater, but that mic'd up video where, how many guys get to walk off the field in terms of, like, you played 16 years. And I'm sure he's nicked up and he's got, back or knees or whatever, but 16 years in the NFL at a very physical position, and he walks out very relatively healthy guy. And you can't script it any better than that. So obviously a staple. I realized driving home yesterday, he's been on the Patriots for more than half my life, which is crazy to think about. He was the longest tenured athlete in Boston for a long time. That honor now belongs to Brad Marchand. By the way, fun fact. And the longest tenured Patriots are now David Andrews and Joe Cardona. So some more fun facts. But yeah, just tremendous career.
Yep. Just,
And he should be a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, definitely. And you hear so much about the stuff he does off the field, and I've only, been in the locker room the last 2 years. You've been a little longer, but like it all holds up when you get to meet him off the field. He's like this big, it's like intimidating going up to him, and then you go up and you introduce yourself, you talk to him, and it's just like everything you hear, everything you read about. He's just such an awesome individual, just as good as he was, on the field that he was off the field. So 16 years, like he said, he got to walk off, and he was doing it playing at a high level too. He probably could have kept playing if he wanted to, but just, congratulations to him. It was a wonderful career. Definitely easy first ballot, red jacket in the Patriots Hall of Fame. And then hopefully he gets some recognition in the actual Pro Football Hall of Fame there. Devin Hester just got in, so maybe that's going to open the door for some of these guys. I think, Adam Vinatieri's up this year to get nominated. So hopefully some of these guys start getting in. But yeah, Slater should definitely be in that group at some point.
I think Hester's him getting in definitely bodes well for Matthew Slater. That's a good stepping stone. It's because the committee doesn't, for years they would view those guys like they were viewing Hester as a wide receiver, and his wide receiver numbers are obviously not, like, he was not a Hall of Fame wide receiver. And so for Slater, it's the same thing. He's very clearly not a Hall of Fame wide receiver, but it doesn't mean he doesn't deserve to be in because he did other things at such a high level. So,
well, did you see someone posted the stat? It was like most Pro Bowlers by a wide receiver, and it was like Jerry Rice, I forget who was second, and then Matthew Slater was third because he's technically listed. So,
well, that was where, like, I remember when I first started on the beat and I got overly excited about like finding stats. I found something that was about like the fewest interceptions per game for a quarterback over a stretch or whatever, and it was like, so and so only threw like 3 interceptions in 40 games or whatever. And I was all excited because the way I found the list, Tom Brady was up there and blah blah blah. But there were these guys I'd never heard of who were at the top of the list, and I was like, all right, that's weird, but I guess he played in the 80s. I probably just never heard of him, whatever. I wasn't born yet. And like an idiot, I instantly get a bunch of replies like, why do you have a bunch of backup quarterbacks on this list? And that was my like, oh yeah, no, I actually have to like research stuff before I post it moment. Yeah, that was a real welcome to the NFL moment for me. But he didn't make that's the thing. He made it as a specialist, and more than any other specialist did. And I think I believe this in all sports. It's more prevalent in football. It's just the nature of the way the sport is played. But when like Billy Wagner and the Baseball Hall of Fame is its own piece of shit mess. But like when people don't discuss Billy Wagner because he's a closer, I'm like, well, he played his position and he was one of the 3 best at his position in the league for an extended period of time. That to me is like base level Hall of Fame qualification. Were you top 3, top 5 year position in the league for an extended period of time? And you can't tell me, and I don't care what your position is, kicker, punter, specialist, like, I don't care. I would make an argument that we should start talking about maybe putting some long snappers in, like, what's his name? The guy in, is it Dallas or Detroit, who's been there for like 25 years?
Detroit, I think. Detroit sounds familiar for some reason.
But it's like, that's a guy that, Don Mullenbach. He was their long snapper from 2004 to 2020. Probably doing something right.
Yeah.
The point being, I don't care that he was a specialist. What his job was, he did it better than everybody else for a long period of time. For me, that's what makes a Hall of Famer. And the whole positional value weight of it is ridiculous. Because why are we faulting kickers that they don't play quarterback? That's just, it's so dumb to me.
Yep. Agree with you there. But again, if you didn't look at, the Patriots social team, they did an awesome job. Really good mic'd up video. It's like 6-7 minutes long. Awesome to hear like the Jets players, like Justin Hardy came up, who is like a very good special teams player now. And he kind of thanked Slater, he said, for changing his life because he got hurt earlier in his career. He put on Matthew Slater film and kind of, created his own path in that area of his game. You had, really respected special teamer Thomas Morstead, kind of getting emotional that Slater was handing it up. Aaron Rodgers called him a Hall of Famer. So that was a really good video. Definitely go check that one out. But yeah, Matthew Slater, 16 years, awesome career. Congratulations to him yet again. Probably, I'd imagine might not go too far. He's said before he'd like to stay around the team as a coach, or maybe one of these, development, personality coaches. So hopefully he's not going too far. I'm sure I'll be ringing the bell on the lighthouse sometime next season too.
Yeah.
That's the important stuff here, but hopefully not going too far either.
So I wouldn't be surprised, like Dante Hightower did, like Gerard Mayo did, like Troy Brown did, like being a coach, even a development coach. There's so many hours and it's so demanding. And these guys have just been players for so many years, and they've been away from their families. And a lot of guys take a couple of years just to get away from football, spend time with their family, like catch up on their life.
Yeah.
And then they come back to football once they've done that. So I think some people were surprised that Slater wasn't on the staff. It wouldn't surprise me if he takes a couple years to him, and he's absolutely earned that, right? And I hope he does. Like, he deserves to enjoy himself and be with his family and all of that. So I wonder if in a couple years it'll be that thing where, like, he'll be around a little bit this year. Maybe next year he starts showing up at camp a little bit more, and the year after that suddenly he's like, all right, now he's been at all these practices, and then the year after that he's finally on the staff. Like, I wonder if it's that kind of thing with him. But I'm not surprised that he's not jumping back into it.
Yeah, he's got young kids, so go take at least a year or two, and then you can get back into it if you want. But maybe someone who might get right back into that is James Ferentz, the offensive lineman who's been here a while. He also called it a career. That was Sunday or I don't know. All the days are getting jumbled here with all this news, but he called it a career as well. And just congratulations to him, of course. And, maybe someone who, wasn't always a starter, wasn't always, raking in the accolades as an offensive lineman, but, built himself a pretty solid career there as a backup, and a really well-respected veteran and leader, especially in the Patriots locker room the last few years. But he's definitely someone, he's been helping these young guys in the locker room the last few years. His, family obviously is very involved in the coaching world. So he's someone who maybe might be on a coaching roster sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be here, just because they have an offensive line coach, an assistant offensive line coach, and then McCarthy, who's a general assistant, but his background's in offensive line. So it feels like they're covered there. I wonder if he goes back to college, whether that's Iowa, he goes with his dad. I don't think, has Brian Ferentz landed another job yet?
I don't think so, because I looked that up when he retired, and I didn't think so.
Yeah, he doesn't have another. I mean, he's gonna, for a couple of reasons, maybe have some trouble getting another job, but maybe he goes wherever Brian ends up. I would say if Bill was in Atlanta, I'd be like, yeah, he's going to Atlanta. But I wouldn't be surprised, just given what his brother does, what his dad does. I wouldn't be surprised if James Ferentz ends up either at Iowa or maybe another college. Maybe he ends up in Washington. They're hiring a bunch of Patriots guys, right? He played under Jed Fish, sort of. So I don't know if they have their offensive line situation set up yet, but I think he's getting into coaching, but I don't think it's going to be here, at least not right now.
Yep. Did Iowa hire their offensive coordinator yet?
They did, but there was like some issue with it.
There's a surprise. Sounds like Iowa that something would go wrong in that.
There was like some weird. Hang on, now I'm curious. I think that they like hired a guy, and then he Bill O'Brien'd him, and then they had to hire another guy.
He realized what he was getting into, going to be the offensive coordinator for Iowa.
See, they hired Tim Lester. Where'd he come from? Tim Lester was a senior analyst for the Packers. So they dipped into the Packers. He'd been he was the head coach of Western Michigan, actually, when they were like good. He was there for like Corey Davis. So should be interesting. I wonder how many points he has to score if that's in his contract. Oh, he wasn't there for the prime Western Michigan years. He was the next guy.
First article is he plans to build an aggressive and disciplined offense. Yeah, that's going to go well.
I mean, run the damn ball, punt to win, baby. That's Iowa football.
Hell yeah.
Just wait till USC has to go to Iowa City in November, and it's
like
cold.
11 a.m.
It's snowing right at 11 a.m. Like, they're going to win 10 games. They're going to be in the Big Ten championship. No matter what happens, they're going to win 10 games.
They do.
They were 90% of programs would consider the season Iowa had this year a monumental success. Even some of their fans considered the season a success. It was just how they got there. That they were the Patriots of college football.
They may be squeaking into the playoffs now with this new format.
They would have been that's what's crazy.
This year, they almost made it
last year.
They almost wouldn't got it last year, yeah, with just the regular setup. If they got that win that got called back on the punt, and then they somehow upset Michigan, like that would have been.
That's Big Ten football, and yeah, we'll see if they get a defense still matters. Shout out to the Iowa defense. Yeah. Shout out to why am I blanking on his name? The corner.
Cooper
DeJean.
Yeah. First round pick. But all right. So yeah, Matthew Slater retired. James Frentz headed to retirement. Josh asks, when is the first mock draft stream? Tomorrow. We will be back for our first live mock draft with the number 3 overall pick. Should be a lot of fun. But in the meantime,
we're taking Cooper DeJean.
We're trading back and taking Cooper DeJean and getting like nothing in return. But follow Alex on Twitter at Real Alex Barth. You can head over to 985thesportshub.com. I'm sure he's got plenty of work up there from today's press conferences. You can follow me on Twitter at I am Brian Hines. Head over to patspulpit.com. We have our own stuff recapping all those press conferences today. Of course, thank you all as always for tuning in, and we will catch you tomorrow again for a live mock draft. See ya.